Next, I invite my speakers to make their way to the stage while we set up our chairs on getting back on track to net zero. Uh, Among our distinguished speakers will be Biki Bangu, President of the UN Global Compact Network in Singapore, Penny Burt, President of Southeast Asia for Boeing, Prasanna Kumar Ganesh, Executive Vice President at Toyota Motor Asia, Vivek Kumar, Chief Executive of WWF Singapore, and Netihorn Pradhistarn, Senior Vice President for Global Partnership for Sustainability and Communications at CP Group. Welcome to my speakers. Please give them a nice round of applause to welcome them. And I think thank you. I can tell you're a high IQ group. You managed to sit underneath your photo, making it very easy for me and photogenic for the audience. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Getting back on track to net zero. Gosh, which of you on this stage thinks we are getting back on track? Hands up. How many of you think that? Are we getting back on track?
Sure.
Oh, one. Okay, let me ask the
Well,
audience.
let's start on a positive note, right? I mean,
Okay. Well, let's take a pulse of the audience. Audience, this is a first vote. It's totally unscientific, but you have to vote one way or the other. Hands up. How many of you think we are getting back on track to net zero? Hands up. Wave them. Wave. Be proud of your position. How many of you think we are not getting on track? Okay. All right. So we can see you have some work to do here, panel. But why don't we start with you, Netihorn, since you expressed some optimism and wanting to start on the right note. Make the case. How are you helping us get on track for net zero?
Okay. Well, thanks, The Economist, for having this event, and thanks for having us. I'm from CP Group. For many of you, it's like we are a conglomerate based in Thailand, a global conglomerate. We operate across 14 different business groups, but the main ones are agri-food, retail, and telecom. So we have a big visibility of how things work out in various sectors. And that's why I think I'm confident to say that we're getting back on track, because geopolitics aside, right? Geopolitics helps us kind of refocus and look at be prepared and look at plan B. How resilient can we be? Second, I think it also helps to stimulate local or homegrown innovations, right? What are the local solutions can we have given the uncertainty of the geopolitics? And third, I think we still have partnership. Multilateralism is still there. Look at, it's like it started from the Westphalian in the 17th century, and look at the ups and downs of multilateralism for these days. Politics comes and goes, right? And in Buddhism, we say that the only certainty is the uncertainty. So let's, as long as we are prepared, we have the right mindset, we have the right innovation, and we have the right people, I think we are right on track.
So I appreciate the optimism, and you've given us, including partnerships as one way forward. But let me press on that a little bit. The CP Group is, of course, a legendary corporation. I was our bureau chief in China covering business for many years. I think license number 1 was awarded to your company, so you have a long-standing relationship there as well. But a big part of your resource base is agricultural. And agriculture, of course, we often focus on the energy sector when it comes to emissions, but agriculture is the tougher corner of the emissions battle. What progress is being made? You wanted to start on optimism. Tell us something positive coming out of either your own operations or more generally on how we can manage agricultural emissions.
Okay. Well, CP Group has been around for over 100 years. Innovation is in our DNA from day one. Right now, I think we are applying a lot of innovation to our basics. What we say about basics is that we innovate about using biogas in our poultry farm and swine farm. So our swine farms are zero waste. We turn the swine gas and the manure into biogas. We use the poultry, we are experimenting the poultry into the biohydrogen poultry. We work with Toyota, we work with CPJT to actually turn this into biohydrogen. We work with rice farmers. We managed to reduce work with 27,000 rice farmers in Thailand to cut down 40% of their greenhouse gas emissions from the farms. And lastly, I think we also experiment on the sustainable aerial fuel, the aviation fuel. So my point is that, it's like innovation is about innovation of the basics. What do you have in hand? What do you already have in hand? Can you make the most and maximize its potentials for the benefits? It's not about the new things. It's like you look around your properties, you look around your operations. Have you actually made the best use of your material? Have you already made your system the most efficient of all? Have you captured all the carbon emission? Are you looking at all the carbon emission capture, storage, and sequestration already without going to new things or investing into new things? So that would be our approach.
Great. So, and you gave some concrete examples, including some substantial figures of scaling up, because that's always the challenge, right? With all these technologies, is death by pilot, right? I run across lots of interesting pilots. They never scale. They get forgotten. They make for good kind of press releases. As Laura started the day, this is a no greenwashing zone, so I'll be pressing all of you to go beyond the greenwashing. Okay, Vivek, let's come to you. An organization that often accuses companies of greenwashing, but also has found ways to work with them. Can you tell us from your perspective at WWF, what is the way that you see corporations that are making progress? What works, and maybe what doesn't work?
Sure, Vijay. So, as someone who has also led business units in billion-dollar organizations, and now in the space that is pushing for real change, I think for most of us as executive leaders, there are 3 points that are very important. The first is a keen eye on revenue, making sure that we are growing there. The second is costs and cost reductions. The third is managing or mitigating risks. And the companies that we have seen make progress are making sure that their sustainability strategy is fitting in as part of one of these. And there are 3 areas that we see emerging. The first is that companies that are doing it, they are prioritizing the focused impact they can make with the initiatives that they are driving. The second is where companies are making sure that they are integrating and they are not isolating. So there are no ivory towers driving sustainability, but that it is integrated as part of operations. I'll maybe give you an example of the first one, which is where companies are looking at prioritizing for material impact. So one of WWF's partners is IKEA, and working in this region, in the greater Mekong region, working in Vietnam, one of the big sources of furniture wood worldwide is acacia trees. And the challenge is manifold. One is that they are often culled or harvested while they are still juvenile. The second challenge is that it moves to monoculture farming, which therefore means that the native trees are gone. And the third is that the premium they get on their produce is very limited, and that fosters the shorter harvesting cycle. And for the last 17 years, what WWF and IKEA have worked together is we have gone to the smallholder farmers. We have made sure that they understand the risk of culling it too early or harvesting it too early. We have worked with them to get them the Forest Stewardship Council certification so that increases the value and the premium. And what we have seen in the last few years is that, number one, the amount of carbon that is sequestered, because the cycle has gone up from 3 to 4 years to 7 to 8 years of an acacia tree. The carbon sequestering has gone up by more than half. The second thing we have done is we have planted almost 65,000 native trees in those areas, and the smallholder farmers are now beginning to see the impact of that in increasing the biodiversity, the quality of water in the streams, and so on and so forth. And because of the FSC certification that they have now begun to get, it really increases the income level.
That's the key, isn't it? You've been able to show value to the smallholders.
Absolutely.
By these sorts of interventions.
Yeah, there are 3,000 smallholders that are part of it now.
Right.
And many of them have commented to us that this shift has helped them come out of the poverty line, which is significant to the quality of life.
Seems the key to connect people and planet to profit. That's how you create a virtuous cycle there. So that's a good example. Prasanna, let's come to you. Toyota has a long history of innovation. The Toyota production system changed the manufacturing world. But it also is one that's debating the future of electrification of transport versus hydrogen. The company has perhaps a different perspective than others. Can you give us an idea of how you think in mobility the track to net zero goes, and will it go in a different way perhaps in parts of Asia than in the rest of the world, which appears to be leaning towards electrification?
Yeah, thank you. I think, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And the reason I said I think we're on track is not necessarily that we're on track to the 1.5 degree, but I think we're on track. We've taken the first steps. And vehicles are actually becoming far more clean. We do see this globally as well. But our perspective has been a bit different from other companies, and I'm very kind of heartened to see your slogan this year, which is about moving from idealism to pragmatism. And Toyota has been fundamentally always focusing on the pragmatic approach. So when we talk about electrification, we are not against battery electric vehicles at all. What we do say is that, however, you have to understand that there are multiple pathways to get to that particular goal. So typically, maybe some companies may be primarily region-focused, like just China-focused or Europe-focused or North America-focused. Toyota pretty much has a balanced portfolio across all of the markets. And we recognize that the solution that works in Norway may not necessarily work in India or may not necessarily work in Indonesia. And in each of these countries, we have to actually look at three primary factors as to why we make our policy. The first one is when we start talking about emissions. When we talk about emissions, we have to look at well-to-wheel emissions. So we can't just talk about the vehicle. We have to look at the energy source. What is the actual energy source available? We do see that in most of Asia, around 15 to 20% is renewable energy, and the majority is still fossil fuel. So if we look at the well-to-wheel emissions, again, country by country, the situation of each of the vehicles are quite different if you actually look at the total well-to-wheel emissions. The second critical issue is the economics. So in order to support, there are three elements. The first is the customer has to be able to afford the vehicle. The second is the governments, if the customer cannot afford it, has to be able to subsidize it for a long period of time. And thirdly, the industry has to be able to transition. So we need to make sure that it's a sustainable transition as well. And the third element is actually the customer. The customer's mobility needs are different. Someone who's driving within Bangkok in a crowded street is very different from someone who's driving up country and is actually carrying 3 tons of goods on the back of their vehicle. So you also mentioned you would rather move an elephant an inch than a mouse a mile. And that is exactly what we think. We need scale. It has to be mass scale electrification. For mass scale electrification, we need battery electric vehicles. That'll probably be 15-20% by 2030. We need hybrid electric vehicles. That'll probably be the majority of ICE vehicles that'll shift. We also probably need things that work
Is that
in
for
Asia.
passenger cars or mostly for long-haul transport?
No, I think we will require it for both, because even if you look at the utilization, first of all, the vehicle price is one of the critical elements, and then people do actually utilize the vehicle within cities and sometimes even for some longer distance. So they do require, without the infrastructure and the charging infrastructure, they still feel comfortable with hybrids or plug-in hybrid vehicles. We do see other options as well. For example, biofuels, if we are able to certify the biofuel. In Asia, there is a lot of biofuel that is now previously was being exported to Europe and other markets, which is now actually kind of excess. So we are in a position to change that to hydrogen or to different bioethanol or biodiesel. We can actually utilize that also with hybrid vehicles, actually have the lowest CO2 emissions in the region. So I think the critical element is we need to move away from this mindset saying clean mobility is just battery electric vehicles. You have to look at actual CO2 and look at the CO2 reduction of each of the solutions in each of the markets. And that's the reason we call it multiple pathway approach. And one final small point I just wanted to mention, even without electrification. So there was a mention about working with CP Group earlier. So we do, for example, utilize the excess bio-waste from CP farms, and we're kind of trialing some hydrogen production with the bio-waste and actually utilizing it for mobility. But that kind of project is still a POC. But what we do see is we see just by improving efficiency of transport. So for example, routing, making sure that the tire pressure of your vehicles is okay, maintaining the vehicle okay, you can reduce about 15% of emissions without changing anything. Right. So just efficient transportation. So I think what we need to do is get out of a mindset saying it's only a one-way approach to tackling this.
So thank you for explaining the Toyota perspective. Of course, it has to be said there is a global juggernaut, and that is the Chinese EV ecosystem. Every year, 100 new models. I mean, April's coming up, Shanghai Auto Show. We'll see 100 new models plus. Costs are getting lower. That technology is getting better. Full autonomy is coming at a rapid pace. And so you have a moving target. But to your point, local conditions in some markets may dictate different kinds of solutions. Yep. And so we'll see how that race ends up. Let's come to you, Penny. help us take off, if I may put it that way, in the direction of net zero. What's your perspective? And maybe we can focus the question a little bit. Aviation gets a lot of attention, disproportionate attention, because I think it's a photogenic sector, but of course it's still responsible for a small share of global emissions, but it's rising fast and it's an aspirational thing. People want to fly, go on holidays, and world trade, we hope, will return to its previous glory, and which requires aviation. So is sustainable aviation fuel going to be a big part of the solution, or should we also think about multiplicity of solutions in aviation? How do you look at it at Boeing?
First of all, thank you very much for having us here this morning. And Boeing is thrilled to be part of this discussion. Vijay, that's a really big question.
I tried to make it a small question.
Happy to go straight to sustainable aviation fuel because it connects beautifully to some of the discussion we've been having already. First, just to level set a little around the aviation sector, as you just did. Currently at 2% of global emissions, but 12% of emissions in the transport sector. Quite frankly, there is a net zero target by 2050 across the aviation and aerospace sector, which has been articulated really clearly by the International Civil Aviation Authority. In terms of, is SAF the only way to go? Quite frankly, there are many things that we can be doing in the aviation sector and in the community more broadly to drive more sustainable aviation. Some of the things that Boeing is very focused on, number one, fleet renewal. Quite frankly, just introducing new airplanes and replacing the planes that are flying today offers every new plane is about a 20 to 30% saving in emissions.
So buy more Boeing planes, people.
Buy more Boeing planes.
That's what you've heard today.
Got
I didn't
it?
realize this was a sales conference. Okay, all right. Okay,
Number one, the sales pitch. Number two, quite frankly, leveraging digital solutions, new technologies and efficiencies, actually moment to moment are driving efficiency optimization in aviation. So that is actually really...
Sorry, just to press on that.
Yeah,
this is applying machine learning or some of the newer tools to route optimization in real time, or is it? Give us a concrete example of what you mean.
A concrete example, use of AI
of data,
across the industry is really important. But if we just think about leveraging digital and data insights, having access to fantastic data solutions can actually allow airlines to optimize for fuel usage, for example, for time at gate. I mean, all sorts of different, routes. So
it's not just route optimization, but it's also standing by.
It's standing by,
the turn times,
it's the way that airports
efficiency.
work. So there are many ways in which leveraging data and digital solutions and new technologies can drive optimization and a greater efficiency. Thirdly, I'm going to say, as we think about the next generation of aircraft, there are new technologies, and of course all of the work that is going into new energy sources means that for the future, the way that we're conceptualizing new airplanes actually is a huge opportunity for creating efficiency. To cut to the chase and sustainable aviation fuel. In the immediate future, we see sustainable aviation fuel as being the thing that can move the needle most quickly and help us drive towards that net zero target.
As contrasted with electrification or hydrogen or some of the other things that are mooted that may be longer term or just for short haul flights, SAF can be blended in, presumably. That makes it pragmatic, a step forward. For all those reasons, I presume, is why you say that.
All of those reasons. I mean, quite frankly, none of us would preclude the development of new technologies that we can't see now.
Sure.
Or the improvement of technologies that are already being investigated. But at the moment, sustainable aviation fuel provides a really useful path forward.
But at the moment, I think all the SAF in the world could probably fill 2 teacups. I mean, it's a very small quantity compared to the volume of jet fuel.
It is. Regrettably, at the moment, the quantity of SAF production, those 2 teacups, as you say, is insufficient for us to be able to achieve that net zero target. What I did want to do, though, was actually to tap into Mal's optimism and say some of the really positive things that we're seeing in terms of the development of sustainable aviation fuel. The Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials, supported by Boeing, has done some really interesting research focused on Southeast Asia on how we take agricultural waste and use that as feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel. Quite frankly, as we all know, Southeast Asia is hugely rich in agricultural waste. Now, I mean, if you think about the ability to collect that waste and actually turn it into SAF production, in the first instance, you provide new livelihood for farmers and rural communities. You reduce the prospect of agricultural waste being burned and creating emissions. Really interesting in terms of what's available in the region. The big challenge, though, to get, because I know that's your next question.
Yes.
The big challenge is, of course, moving from the availability of this feedstock to creating an environment in which there is an incentive for production.
Yeah.
And Vijay, you said it yourself very clearly before, sparking investment in renewables, that's, that's a tough climb. I'm going to stop there and
Yeah.
We do have more than 2 teacups of poultry manure for you if you want to do it. Way
Okay,
more.
maybe 2 teapots. Still pretty small.
2 buckets.
But, and I'll share one small anecdote about the changing times. I've been on the west coast of the US and in London recently where I met with 2 different companies making SAF, startups, the ones that are making 1 teacup each so far. And both of them told me because of the political winds in America, independently, they're rebranding their product. SAF is no longer sustainable aviation fuel, it's synthetic aviation fuel. Why? Because sustainability is a dirty word now in America. So just so you know what's going on. Binti, presumably sustainability is not a dirty word at the UN Global Compact. Tell us your perspective. In particular, we've heard the point of data mentioned by a couple of folks, data interoperability. I know there's a lot of work being done on this. How can it advance us on this road towards emissions reductions and net zero?
Now, when we look at some of the great work that's been done by organizations, Toyota, Boeing as examples there, we've got to look at, whilst organizations might be progressing collectively as a nation and collectively as a society, we're not. If I look at our Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of them, we've regressed more than we've actually progressed.
Yeah.
Against the Paris Agreement, we have the alignment of where you have your nationally determined contributions that are given by countries. Last month, it was when the deadline was, and only 18 of the 195 countries have actually submitted their contributions in terms of the changes that they're going to drive in their countries. So why is it that organizations are doing well, but at the same time, we're seeing sort of as a society we're not? And it comes back down to your sort of the opening on the geopolitical sides and the impact that it's having on the policies, on the initiatives and the drives of what might be seen as how to actually navigate through this complexity of the geopolitical side. And there are risks. The risk is that organizations may end up doing a little bit less, or they may end up being challenged on how to collaborate with other companies or other geographies against the backdrop of US pulling out of the Paris Agreement, against the backdrop of the Ukraine crisis, against the backdrop of the Middle East conflict and the impact that it has on supply chain. So against that backdrop, it's quite concerning on how do we find our way forwards. And this is where the United Nations Global Compact comes together to actually guide the companies to make sure that their strategies continue to be embedded with sustainability.
Give us an example. Because so far you've only brought us all down. I'm really bummed out now. So give us the flip side of this. Where are you going with this?
So I'll come into Boeing's sort of position on how they're actually contributing and making their sort of aeroplanes accepting of sustainable aviation fuel. The challenge is not so much on the demand signal, it's more on the supply side. You mentioned your two key teacups. So how do we lift that supply side to be able to give us the 50 million tons that we need by 2050 to be able to serve the industry of the aerospace and airlines?
I mean, one example might be advanced market commitments or collective buying groups or some mechanisms like that.
Or
could help.
regulatories and
Or they
putting
could
the
be
advances-
mandates, of
Yeah,
course,
the mandates and the incentives at the same time to be able to transition this shift.
Right.
Now, let's shift to the positive. This is where the corporate organization, and Asia in particular, has a real sort of opportunity to lift some of these initiatives. And we're seeing some of this actually happening within Asia. We've got Singapore, Japan, Korea, and Australia all really contributing significantly on their corporate strategies, and their leadership are driving the sustainability agenda. We've got Japan committing to the net zero by 2050. We've got Singapore, who's just recently said, actually, previously we committed 45 to 50 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2030. We're going to actually up the game and bring it to 60 million tons of reduction. So these are some of the initiatives that are driving forward in Asia, and we need to continue to emphasize that.
So we need
I
to double
think-
down on some of these initiatives. That's how you overcome that
And the
negative
key is
trend.
collaboration.
Yeah.
We've got to bring corporate organizations so we don't work in silos. We've got to bring the policies so they're
Yeah.
knitted together. We've got to bring the NGOs, and we've got to bring the communities together to be able to collectively drive this forward.
Very clearly elucidated. One or two questions in the time we have. There's a lady there with the hand up. Very quickly, we'll get a microphone to you. And if we have a second runner, I see in the very back row, a gentleman standing up. We'll get the microphone to you. We just have a little bit of time, so please make it a quick question, and we'll have a quick answer from one of our speakers.
All right, thank you, Vijay. My name is Dr. Rosita. I'm also going to be one of the speakers this afternoon, 3 o'clock.
Ah, you're double dipping then.
Yeah. No,
All right, I'll allow it.
is,
Go on.
yes, the issue is actually, the background where I come from is actually from two different worlds. I can say myself a hybrid. One is an academic background as a researcher in the university, and another one is the managing director of the startups. So what I'm doing actually, I'm commercializing
Your
the
question now,
R&D.
please, your
Yes,
question.
to the startup. So what I have, the challenge that I'm facing now is actually it's very, very hard for me to commercialize the R&Ds that we are working on. One good example is the SAF. I'm one of the SAF researchers where we got the feedstock and commercialize it into the biofuels or biojet fuels at the end for Jet A1. But it has been like 5 years of research, but it's very, very hard for us to commercialize. And like mentioned by Becky just now, the innovation driven is very, very strong, but we do need a very strong ecosystem in making sure that to materialize the funding, the support, the execution
Right.
to the real application
Okay,
at the end
so
of the
the
day.
question
yeah.
really has to do with risk capital and early stage innovation. Thank you.
Yep.
We'll come to that. Let's go to the back and let's get that question as well, and I'll have responses. I see the hand all the way. Okay, fine. You go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Hari Krishna. I'm a sustainability researcher, and I also work with HelpAge International as a climate change advisor. My question is to the leadership here, to what extent, I assume that you all collaborate, all the business houses collaborate with United Nations Global Compact. To what extent your collaboration with United Nations Global Compact motivates your leadership or informs your leadership and drives you to the sustainability action?
Okay, great. We got a couple of questions. Who wants to take on the question about risk capital? Maybe you want to do that?
Well, I could, well, two things, because my other hat is Secretary General of the Thailand chapter of the UN Global Compact.
Oh, okay.
So answering to that, two things, right? One is to create transparency. Don't undermine the importance of reporting. Reporting helps organize the structures together. It also gets the information out. Then it creates peer comparison and competition, positive competition, race to the top. And second, I know that I don't have the second chance after this, so don't underestimate, like we haven't talked much about the soft side, the people. The people, not just in our organizations, our CFOs, our CEOs that we need to convince on these strategies, but also the people, students, academic researchers, and also family members. When we go home today, like, are we able to convince them what we have learned today, our children, our parents, to actually appreciate the importance of sustainability? And third, I think is
Well, hold on. You said one more. Well, no,
Well, one more.
no. I'm cutting you off. Okay.
It's,
It's,
it's
but you want to
leadership.
jump in on a question from the
Yeah,
floor because we
exactly.
owe an answer to our questioner.
That's right. And I think that's a great question. And I would make this point, and this is from our own experience, is that somebody has got to take the lead to bring together the earliest stage innovations with the real need in the economy and a business partner in order to make that happen. And I'll give you an example, Vijay. It is what happened in Singapore. You know, when COVID happened and the lockdown happened, all of us shifted to e-commerce deliveries. And all these e-commerce deliveries came with multiple layers of single-use plastics. And in case we don't realize in this room, I learned it late, is the total GHG, greenhouse gas footprint of plastics is actually more than aviation, or perhaps about the same. So, but it is something we don't pay attention to. So when we went to companies and we said, why aren't you using reusable packaging rather than just single-use plastics? And they said, no, it's very difficult for our operations. It is too expensive. We don't have the ability to do it. So WWF pulled together a pilot where we got DHL Express, we got SingPost, which is the largest delivery company, 12 e-commerce players, as well as a reusable packaging company. And that pilot, only about tens of thousands of deliveries, which is perhaps very small in the larger scheme of things, but that demonstrated that the operational staff was happy to use it because it was just Velcro instead of tying it up many, many times. The consumers opted for it, and surprise, surprise, in a time-scarce Singapore, more than two-thirds of them actually went to return it, so it can be reused. So the point is that, look, we have to pull together ecosystems that are going to test, that are going to pilot, and then have the willingness within the industry and perhaps the regulatory level playing field to scale it up. It's very, very important, but it is doable.
Vivek, I'm going to end on that note because it beautifully pulls together the idea. It's not just about finance. It's not just about the dollars and cents, as it were, but it's actually about an ecosystem. When we talk about new ideas coming to market, and I wrote a book on innovation called Need, Speed, and Greed, available at good bookstores near you. And one of the essential insights is it's not about invention. It's about creating value for people, for customers, for government, for your citizens, for your stakeholders. And that requires ecosystem thinking, which you illustrated very beautifully. As I say, we're out of time. We could have probably gone another half an hour, but please give my panel a nice round of applause for sharing their insights.